As far as Trump, I don't think there is actually a perfect analog. I mean, in my view, he's a fascist, but he's a different sort of fascist. Unlike the first round of fascists, he's actually very concerned about personal wealth.
Every time you see the rise of an authoritarian in any country, one of the first things that happens is that the opposition splinters.
The way that you beat fascism is with coalitions.
So we need to talk about fascism or neo-fascism in America. And I'm not being hyperbolic when I say that. And we've got snippets here today from recent interviews of two of the leading experts on authoritarianism, perhaps in the world, definitely the US. And we'll listen to them talk about it and I'll react to it. It's Timothy Snyder and Anne Applebaum. This is Timothy Snyder's book. You might have heard of it, On Tyranny, 20 Lessons from the 20th Century. If you haven't read it, and it's not a long book, it's very informative about what's going on today and authoritarian regimes and how to fight them, how to combat them. It's a really good book. I highly recommend it. And also Anne's book, Autocracy Inc., which is fairly new, talking about autocracies around the world. She studied them and recent ones too, which she talks about a little bit, but I highly recommend this book too. Again, two leading experts on autocracies and fascism, and this is what they're saying about what's happening in the US right now. Let's get into it.
As far as Trump, I don't think there is actually a perfect analog. I mean, in my view, he's a fascist, but he's a different sort of fascist in that I think he cares, in an odd way, he cares much less about the community than the first round of fascists did. And unlike the first round of fascists, he's actually very concerned about personal wealth, which what everyone wants to say about them was generally not their case. So I don't think there's a perfect analogy for him.
Recently, it's been talked about the personal wealth thing, how Trump is enriching himself and his family the second time around. Different to Trump 1.0, there was a bit of that, but this is full on what he's doing and many other things. But that's just one sign that Timothy Snyder's talking about here.
It helps a lot to know the history of the 1920s and 1930s at this point. I think the kinds of politics we're talking about where people worship a leader, that's fascist, right? Like the way that people worship Elon Musk is fascist.
I've talked about that a lot on the other channel, Elon Musk, who has joined together with Trump, an oligarch, the richest person in the world, joining into politics with Trump, and they're both neo-fascists. Elon did those salutes where people were saying, oh, it was a mistake. He said it was a mistake, but it really wasn't. And Timothy Snyder's talked about that in another place where he says it's like a physical need that they were going to do that at some point. We had Steve Bannon doing that as well. And so we've got this non-accidental salutes, but Elon's backed it up with many neo-fascist things that he says all the time on his X stream.
But the way that Musk and Trump and so on operate by giving out gifts, the sort of everyday corruption, or if you want to put it in an anthropologically neutral way, a gift-giving culture where politics is reduced to there's a chieftain at the center and the chieftain has the authority to give gifts and expects gifts in return.
Okay, so we've got just in the last week or so, we had the news you might have heard about the jet that Qatar wants to give Trump, and he's willing to accept it, a massive gift. What do they want in return? This gift-giving culture between autocrats that he is talking about. And this is Anne Applebaum here.
A scale of 1 to Orban, where are we?
So Orban is the autocrat in Hungary, and she's studied that country. She's been there, been to Poland and studied these countries in depth and knows what's going on. If you read that book, Autocracy Inc., she talks about how these regimes trade with each other, deal with each other, support each other.
It's funny because we are moving faster than Orban did in some ways. I mean, Orban never had teams of people who went into government ministries and changed got into the computer systems and reoriented programs.
So she's talking about Musk there going in with Doge, stealing information. We've heard from whistleblowers, which I've made videos about. They know that data's been taken. He just went in there with Trump's permission. It's unprecedented, this level of intervention by an oligarch into the government.
He never actually went after law firms in the way that this is happening. I mean, there are a lot of things that Trump is doing in a full frontal way. In your face are things that Orban did over many years and very slowly. But I think your point that people don't recognize it because they're already used to this level of political chaos, and they're already used to the way that Trump talks, and they're already used to the lying and the fact that they don't know anything. I mean, I think that puts us pretty far along. I mean, I don't know what number we are, 6, 7. I mean, but the the fact that people are already prepared to accept stuff that would have shocked them a decade ago, because of everything that's happened over the last, in the last several years, I think that's already an authoritarian sign.
So normalizing the kind of stuff that Trump says all the time, the kind of thing that they do, people are getting used to it, normalized over years. His first term, and then people saw the slide even under the Biden administration. Certain things happened. There was lawfare talked about. They went after Trump. And the slide to authoritarianism has not been really quick, although in the last 100 days or just over, it's been going really fast. It's like Trump has an agenda, Project 2025, and as Anne says here, going really quickly now compared to some other autocracies that have been around the world. It's like they had a plan, they're carrying it out, and the people are kind of shell-shocked or haven't realized what's going on yet.
Of Democrats, we're just such wimps. We're afraid to call this fascism when every key component or definition of fascism perfectly fits, in my view, what is going on right now. Demonization of immigrants, refusal to condemn political violence, extreme nationalism. It feels like this is the definition of fascism. And yet on the left, we're afraid to use these words for fear, like we have this need to empathize and take the higher ground. Can you point to a point in history or best practices around when a democracy moves towards some sort of authoritarianism or oligarchy or fascism? What can you point to, and what lessons can we take from who's been most effective, and what are the components of that pushback when a country has flirted with fascism and then has been pulled back from the brink? What are the components of pulling back or pushing back?
Okay, so this is Scott Galloway interviewing Tim Snyder not long ago. I'm going to put links to all of these interviews in the description here if you want to see the whole interviews, but I've picked out some snippets here that I think are particularly important.
Let me break that question down into two parts, because I think there are two things that work together that help us to answer it. So the question, why aren't we allowed to say fascism, I think is directly related to the answer. So as you say, it's patently obvious that there has been a return of fascism around the world for quite some time. I started writing about it more than 10 years ago using the word. And then, as you quite rightly say, that, and one can agree or disagree about how big it is and just who exactly is in it. But I think it's palpably grotesque to deny that there has been a world return of fascism and that didn't begin yesterday.
Okay, so this is something that Anne wrote about in her book, Autocracy, Inc., the various regimes, the authoritarian regimes right now around the world, and there'll be more than you might think, and new ones as well, and with the US turning this way as well, and being buddy-buddy with other authoritarians as well. You'll notice that if you follow current events.
And so then, as you say, if we were confronted with all of these empirical signs of fascism, and again, one can disagree about exactly what fascism is, but the signs, no matter whose definition you take, are overwhelming. It doesn't matter whose definition you take. The signs are overwhelming. They're there. And so why do we not accept that? And I think that has to do with the second part, right? Because if you accept that it's fascism, then you have to organize. And you have to organize with people that you might not necessarily like. If you deny it's fascism, then you can imagine, okay, the normal pathways of politics are going to work. Somehow things are going to self-correct. The moment you accept that it's fascism, you have to organize. You have to take action, you have to organize, and you have to organize with people who agree with you and people who don't completely agree with you. And this is part of the answer now to the question, because the way that you beat fascism is with coalitions. The way that you beat fascism is that you get to a majority by including people who don't agree about everything. It has to be a clear majority because they're ruthless, and also they may control aspects of the state. So the way that you pull back is that you get a coalition, right? This is Poland in 2023, for example. The way that you pull back is you get a coalition which can win an election. But this goes to the Democrats. I take the point about the Democrats, but it's very important. I think your analysis is also correct, but it's very important for us who are not activists in the Democratic Party to remember that we have to not make the same mistake that they're making. Like the fact that they are inactive or they don't use a word is not an excuse for us to be inactive and not use the word. We have to create all possible bridges, pageantry, opportunities for those of them who want to make a move. So the more civil society activism there is, the more protesting there is, the more chance there is that you pull the establishment party or important elements of it in your direction.
Okay, so to summarize a little bit there, what he said that is unification, to unify, to join with people that we might not usually agree with, but joining together to combat what is going on that will be necessary, and protesting, he said, which we have seen a bit of, a lot around Tesla, to boycott Tesla, which I've talked about on the other channel a lot, and Elon Musk being a neo-fascist as well. So to combat it in different ways, join together with people that we wouldn't normally, that's necessary. He talked about Poland there, which went towards this and has pulled back successfully. So both Anne and Tim Snyder have talked about this and have studied what's happened in Poland and in Hungary as well, and other places too.
First of all, every time you see the rise of an authoritarian in any country, one of the first things that happens is that the opposition splinters. Because the rules of politics have changed, sometimes in ways that people don't initially understand. And whatever was the previous opposition doesn't understand the new rules. And they fight with each other and they split into different parties. Look, a country like Iran, the political opposition, had dozens of parties who fought with each other and, for years. Russia, same story. Venezuela, until recently, also the same story. Hungary, the same story. You had the rise of Orban, and in response, you had the left and the Greens and others, fighting one another, rather than unifying or finding a way to push back against the damage that he was doing.
In the US, we've got the Democrats who don't seem to be doing much. People say, what are they doing? They're not really fighting back. There's a few people, like Bernie and AOC, who are talking about oligarchy, and we've got Jasmine Crockett speaking up, but really not much opposition. And after the election, it splintered. They were kind of shocked when they lost. They're talking about sort of waiting it out. I've seen political strategists saying we just need to wait it out for the 4 years or until we get a break, and so we can attack. But really, this is different. What's going on is different.
So this is normal.
Normal but different. She's talking about normal for an authoritarian regime, how it starts and how it gets going. What's happening now is normal for that, she's saying.
I mean, I heard this frustration in Poland in 2016 and 17. It was the same thing. The opposition is powerless. They can't fight back, and so on. One of the things that needs to happen is for people to understand the rules are different, that the things that divided us before can't divide us now. There was a scene was it yesterday or the day before of, Palestinian activists attacking AOC at one of her events. I mean, this is a kind of own goal.
Allies turning on allies.
And that's kind of, that's something that has to be avoided. But also, I think the Democrats need to look for what are the stories, what are the narratives, what are they going to find that unifies not only them and not only brings together different kinds of Democrats, but also reaches people who voted for Trump or people who stayed home, people in the rest of the country.
Yeah, I've seen people, MAGA people or people who voted for Trump, not quite getting it yet. And she has talked about how people find it hard to go back on a decision like that if they've gone down this path. And especially educated people find it harder to go back on a decision like that. So you see people twisting themselves in knots, like Bill Ackman, for instance, on X, to justify what's going on, to keep supporting in the face of rising authoritarian where they can't accept it. I mean, you can see how these things happened, and even in Germany in the 1920s and 30s, how the public went along with it. You say, how did that happen? How did people go along with it? And what we're seeing in the US right now is like that.
Actually, one of the things that might eventually work once it begins to sink in is the idea that I spoke about before. This idea of corruption, and it's linked to your well-being. And you're already hearing some of it. When AOC and Bernie Sanders talk about oligarchy. When I think it's Elizabeth Warren who keeps saying, they're getting rich and you're going to lose your health care. Beginning to make those links between what people are seeing and hearing, even if vaguely, about Trump and the people around him.
So pointing out corruption is what she's talking about there, pointing it out, talking about it, making it public, having discussions about it, and people start to realize more and more what's going on, the corruption, the absolute corruption that's going on. That's why I like hearing more about this, about the jet that he was offered that he wants to take, and lots of other things, personally enriching himself. Doge went in there to saying that they're finding waste and everything, but really they didn't find much at all. Fraud, they haven't prosecuted anybody. What was Elon Musk doing in there? And I've talked about that in other videos.
And how it affects people. I mean, the same is true actually for the decline in the justice system, is that, when you talk to people about judicial independence, that can be a little bit too theoretical. When you begin to say, look, these are, you've had these, illegal deportations of people who are in this country legally. You've had, even U.S. citizens being detained at the border. This is a new system, and eventually it could be coming for you. And when you link together people's personal experiences and the political mess that they see around them, I mean, I think then you begin to get powerful narratives that move people.
Yeah, so I'd like to see more of that going on. It'll be interesting to see if we do. I hope we do. More people talking about it, more people pointing out the corruption and joining together to combat this. And some people are starting to realize that, especially with these ICE raids and deporting people without due process. Stephen Miller talking about suspending habeas corpus, which I made a video about. There's so many things every day, and people get used to the lies and like flooding the zone. People get apathetic, and that's what they want. They want people to be apolitical, apathetic, so they can do what they want. And I'm going to be talking more about this in coming videos as well. This is one of the most important things going on in the world at the moment, but I'd love to know what you think. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this. Do you think that the US is turning into neo-fascist or more generally authoritarian? Anne said there's like 6 or 7, down the road to 10. Let me know what you think in the comments. And also, I'm going to put a related video right here. Go and see that now if you want to. And also a subscribe link on screen. This is a new channel. You probably come here from my other channel. If you haven't, hi. I'm glad that you found this channel. It didn't quite fit on the other channel, these kinds of videos. So I can talk freely here about politics and get into what is going on. And thanks for watching this one. And I'll see you in the next one.